Mark adjusted his reading glasses and squinted at the numbers on his laptop screen. His fingers hovered over the calculator, hesitating as he punched in a few figures. Next to him, Linda sat on the couch, absent-mindedly flipping through a magazine. The late afternoon sun streamed through the living room window, casting a warm glow over their modest suburban home in Ohio. At 57, Mark had spent most of his career as an operations manager for a manufacturing company. Linda, 55, had worked part-time as a freelance graphic designer while raising their 2 children, who had long since moved out. They had always assumed they were on track for a comfortable retirement. Until now. "We need to talk," Mark said finally, his voice breaking the silence. Linda looked up. "That sounds serious." "It is," Mark admitted, rubbing his temple. "I've been going over our finances, and I don't think we're as prepared for retirement as we thought." Linda set her magazine aside and leaned forward. "What do you mean? We've been saving for years." "Yes, but not enough," Mark sighed. "Our expenses are higher than we estimated, and our investments haven't grown as much as we hoped. Plus, we haven't factored in unexpected costs, like healthcare." A moment of silence stretched between them. For years, they had talked about their golden years as if they would be effortless, a time to travel, enjoy hobbies, and spend time with the future grandchildren. But now, the reality was setting in. Retirement wasn't just about stopping work. It was about making sure they had enough to live comfortably for decades. Linda bit her lip. "So, what do we do?" Mark exhaled, trying to gather his thoughts. "We need a plan, a real one, not just wishful thinking." Like many couples, Mark and Linda had done the basics. They had a 401k, some savings, and a house that was nearly paid off. But they had never sat down to map out exactly what retirement would look like, how much they would need, or how to manage their money effectively. "I talked to a financial planner at work last week," Mark admitted. "He said most couples underestimate how much they'll need in retirement." Linda raised an eyebrow. "How much are we underestimating?" Mark hesitated. "A lot." That evening, they sat at the kitchen table with stacks of papers, laptops, and calculators, determined to face the reality of their finance. They started by listing their expected expenses. Some, like groceries and utilities, were straightforward. Others, like travel, medical costs, and home maintenance, were harder to predict. "I read that healthcare can cost an average retired couple over $300,000, Linda said, scrolling through an article on her phone. "That's insane." Mark nodded. "And what about inflation? What seems affordable now might not be in 20 years. The numbers were sobering, but the exercise forced them to think realistically. They needed to budget not just for daily living, but also for long-term expenses. Then came an even tougher question. How long would their savings need to last? "I hate to be morbid," Linda said, "but what if one of us lives to 95? Mark sighed. "That's a long time to stretch our savings. We need to be smart about this." They realized they needed to estimate how long they might live and plan accordingly. Longevity was both a blessing and a challenge. Mark reviewed their savings accounts and 401k statements. He realized they needed to be more aggressive in their investments. "We should meet with a financial advisor," he suggested. "We need to make sure our money is working for us." Linda agreed. They scheduled an appointment for the following week. When they met with the advisor, they were given a few tough realities. "You've done a decent job saving," the advisor said, scanning their financial statements. "But you need to adjust your approach. You need to protect your savings from inflation while still getting some growth. She suggested diversifying their investments, considering a mix of bonds, index funds, and even delaying Social Security to maximize their benefits. Mark and Linda listened intently, taking notes. "This feels overwhelming," Linda admitted. The advisor smiled. "It's better to feel overwhelmed now and do something about it than to be blindsided later." As they talked more about money, they realized their expectations about retirement might need to change. "We always talked about traveling the world," Linda mused. "But maybe we need to rethink how we do that." Mark smiled. "We don't have to stay in five-star resorts. What about house swapping or off-season travel? We can still have adventures, just on a budget." They also considered downsizing their home. With both kids gone, did they really need a 4-bedroom house? A smaller place means lower expenses, less maintenance, and more freedom. Mark said, "We could even move somewhere with a lower cost of living." The idea grew on them. A change of scenery might be just what they needed. As they looked ahead, they also had to face uncomfortable topics, like what would happen if one of them got sick or passed away. "We need to update our wills," Linda pointed out, "and look into long-term care insurance." Mark swallowed hard. These weren't easy conversations, but they were necessary. They promised each other they would take care of the legal and medical paperwork soon. They also talked about how they wanted to spend their time. Would they take up new hobbies? Would Mark finally learn to play the guitar he had bought years ago? Would Linda pursue her dream of opening a small online art store? The more they talked, the more they realized retirement wasn't about stopping. It was about starting something new. Over the next few months, Mark and Linda worked through their plan. They met with a financial advisor, adjusted their investment strategy, and explored different retirement options. They even started decluttering their home in preparation for a possible downsize. Most importantly, they felt a renewed sense of partnership. They weren't just reacting to life, they were taking control of it. One evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset, Linda took Mark's hand. "I feel better," she said softly. "I was scared at first, but now I feel like we have a real plan." Mark squeezed her fingers. "Me too. We're in this together." Their journey wasn't just about numbers. It was about finding a way to enjoy their later years without financial stress. With a little planning, discipline, and teamwork, they were making their dream retirement a reality. And that, they realized, was the most valuable investment of all.